if you have a container that doesn't have any liquid in it, let's say it's like, a water pack that you're going to take with you, you do not really necessarily know if it has leaks unless you put water in it to see it. Unless it's clearly visibly damaged, a small leak or leaks may not be visible until you put water in it. So the way to really tell if something has leaks is you want it to be under pressure to be able to see. And that's the key. Is I've noticed that I think sometimes we feel like we go into our day with a preloaded worldview of like, hey, it's going to be a pretty good day. I've got a pretty good perspective. I've got a pretty good, attitude going into whether it's a Monday or a Thursday or a Saturday or whatever, and then from how we're oriented, how our vision is, we are going to respond to different situations and different people in different ways. But once the pressure is applied, that's when we get to see if there's leaks. Here's what I mean by leaks. And this is what got me thinking about it. It's something Jesus had said. So Jesus says, if you only love the people that love you back, he's like, what good is that? He's like, basically anybody does that. There's nothing distinct. There's nothing elevated. There's no aspect of this heavenly kingdom he talked about being present in that moment. That's just like everything else. If people wrong you and we don't love them, forgive them, or pray for them, or have like hope and desire to see them transformed, or see that wrong righted, or see them hope to find their way, then it's just like every other kingdom. It's just like this realm. It's just like the earth, the world. We're just in it, we're grinding it out. But he kind of explained that there's this other perspective. He's like, no, like your actual enemies, like the people who he says hate you, so really, really strong words, right? I don't think that applies in not every situation you're in. Do you have people hating you, or do you have enemies in it? But he's saying in the most extreme situations in your life, have love for them and actually pray for them. So I'm thinking about this and I'm like, actually, we would probably know if we're lacking in having that love for others or that gratitude for others when it's under pressure, not before. Because he's like, hey, if you think that you have this, but you only love those who love you, people that are kind to you, he's like, what good is that? That's like everything else. And he flips it. He's like, no, when it's under pressure, that's when you're going to that's when you see it. And that's what got me thinking. If we look at the oscillating, let's say the geopolitical climate, or if we look online, the technological geopolitical climate, wherever you sit in your perspective of what's going on, for whatever the issues are, whatever the rules of the land, whatever country, whatever you're looking at, there's different opinions. And there's like an oscillating wave that we see through nature and in creation in many ways. There's an oscillating wave, with trends, sometimes that wave is over decades, sometimes it's maybe over centuries in some things, sometimes it's over years or months, and sometimes it's even smaller. In our own lives, that oscillating wave, I think, can be much tighter. But let's just say from a geopolitical standpoint, if you're going into a period where it's dipping down and you're really frustrated or really concerned about a lot of things you're seeing in the world, and you see groups of people that have the opposite perspective of you, that are maybe even driving those ideas because they feel like that's what's best for the world or for them, that's the under pressure. So now you've got under pressure to see if you have leaks, to see if your perspective for the world has this like elevated heavenly like perspective to like bring hope and transformation and actually care or even like pray for those people and wish them well. Or it's just you're grinding it out, you're in the thick of the world and you're like, oh, that's awful. And, but under pressure, that's where we find out. So actually in the difficult times is when we get to see under pressure what's actually going on. And I think the silver lining for those seasons is that you get to see where to repair it. That it's not a hopeless thing. It's not like, oh, you're screwed. Like, oh, you've got leaks, or you're, under pressure. You're kind of, that perspective isn't there. It's really falling. I think there's an invitation there that when things are difficult, when things, whether it's an external thing that we're looking at, maybe something politically or something that's happening economically or in a workplace or in a with colleagues or whatever, or if it's internal. And this is where I think it's so applicable. for like the daily rhythms of our lives is the inner dialogue we have with ourselves. If sometimes it's up and we're like, hey, this is really great, and we are like cool with it, we're like optimistic, we're encouraging, our thoughts are really supportive, we're like, hey, yeah, this is great, you're able to handle things well. Or in the days when it feels darker and it's under pressure, what is that like in how we treat ourselves, our inner dialogue with that? I think it's key just to loop it back with because Jesus was kind of talking about this. He also says to love others the way we love ourselves. So if on the days where we haven't even interacted with anyone, if that inner dialogue that we have is like really, really dark, we don't even have grace for ourselves, we don't have hope for ourselves, we're not even like in that position of like believing or asking or like wanting to receive transformation, praying. I don't know, praying for yourself, is that a thing? But to actually like believe for like, no, I believe for this moment to change. I believe that there's a grace for myself in this area where I want to be better in this area. I know I can be better in this area. Is there a grace in those times? Because those times are also times under pressure. It's just internal. So I feel like that inner dialogue, that inner experience, and then seeing that outer experience of how we are in those ways, I think is so key. And the reason why, talk about financially checking for leaks, whether it's cash flow or in your business or your household, you're spending whatever, or looking for leaks in your time, whether it's time scrolling or time watching something or time doing some activity or not doing some activity that is, really not in alignment with who you want to be. Those leaks also impacted by that inner perspective, whether it's internally under pressure or whether when there's circumstances or even people that are helping to like really bring something to the surface where you're like, you feel so strongly in that. Under that amount of pressure, you're going to get to see what those seams are like. And if there's an area of that needs to be repaired, if you want it to be repaired, I think that with what Jesus is saying is there's like an invitation that those seams actually can be repaired and are actually supposed to be prepared. And it's kind of crazy that he actually closes that statement, by saying, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I can even wrap my head around that idea, because like, who's perfect, right? So there's this like paradox where he's like, no, this idea of like, actually, when you see the most difficult thing, like an enemy, someone who's actually like throwing or like coming at you, an enemy wants to destroy you, and there's hatred. He's, those who your enemy or someone who hates you, he's like, actually like love them, bless them, forgive them, pray for them. But then internally, when we have those like that conflict that's trying to like keep us down, not allow us to like change or become, who it is we really believe or know that we can or are. In both of those instances, there's this totally other kingdom that is full of like grace and transformation, that in the dark times under pressure, it can handle it, So anyways, I think that's really cool.